I'm so excited to talk to you about this series because I am so in love with it. I would just want to recap our audience with where we last see you at the end of season two.
Well, you want me to say?
Yeah.
Well, I end up without any warning, deciding to speak directly to the president because I believe, with pretty good reason, I think that he's the only one that can really be trusted to be told, and that telling anyone else would hand them the potential for power moves that would be deleterious to both me and Kate, especially Kate. However, that turns out to be a bad move because of his pre-existing heart condition, which has been signaled all the way through the first couple of seasons that some people missed, that it just brings on a massive heart attack and he dies on the spot, which leaves, it's a tragic situation and leaves us in a terrible situation because it makes Grace Penn immediately president, who we have just made an enemy of. Oh, excuse me, I've left the fridge on. Now it's closed. That's the beeping. Bit of domestic life popping in there.
Well, and
How's that for a recap?
that's a good recap.
Good.
I was already on the edge of my seat, like, yes, this. Um, Hal has had, let's just say, a lot to contend with in two seasons, and a lot of his storyline in season two was carried over from the finale in season one. Talk to me about playing a character with PTSD and how you navigated that uphill battle in season two.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, for not to suggest that PTSD is not complicated, but it's a little bit more complicated than that because Hal has been through these things before and he is quite assured that he does not have PTSD because he's been in explosions before. People have tried to kill him before. He's been kidnapped before. So when he says, I'm fine, he means it and he has good reason to mean it. But there's one situation in which it is actually triggered and it takes him completely by surprise, and that is, that's a case of the things that we think we're good at sometimes are the things we stumble at. So it's a nice little intimation of vulnerability and mortality, that because he's someone who, he's like a cat. Do you know what I mean? He lands on his feet. He's people don't worry about him, you know. So it comes as a bit of a shock, but I wasn't playing, and I think it's important to not play someone who was struggling with PTSD, because he generally wasn't, but suddenly has, it comes out of nowhere. Whereas with Stuart, he's dealing with it the whole time. You can see that coming. So that wasn't something that that factored into the playing of the rest of it at all, you know.
Yeah,
So obviously there was the physical handicaps, there was the limp, there was and also in terms of the filming of it, doing episodes out of sequence, and then having a 4-month strike, remembering the level of, you're actually having to kind of to work out which stage you would be at. Took a lot of kind of mathematical work as well, And that was one of the things I was more worried about than anything else. It was like, God, don't forget to limp. Now you're not limping. Now you are. Now you're like,
that's wild. You did
inside
that.
baseball there for you, but
Well, you did it so seamlessly. I never would have known.
it was pretty seamful from where I was standing.
Um, in talking
But
about,
thank you.
yeah. In talking about those scenes, one of the most powerful scenes to me was that moment during the fireworks with you and
Well,
Carrie's.
that was the moment, that I was
Yeah,
talking about. Yeah.
yeah.
Because he's completely expecting himself to be fine. It's like, is Stuart going to be okay? I don't worry about me. And it's not like, so it was very powerful, and I love it. It's one of the things that I love most about, especially when you're playing someone who has an assurance about them, and also someone who tends to know the lay of the land. He knows what's coming. He knows what the gag is. He knows who's in, who's out. He can see what people are planning. He's normally a few steps ahead. I love it when that fails.
Yeah.
It's always very interesting, to be in the wrong, to not to be in the know, to be failing. These are the things that make it, playing a character like that, interesting, because if it's nothing but pluses, then it's a bore. You become one of like these cheesy TV, heroes who's just always goddamn right, you know, and that's a different type of thing, and not my bag, as anyone who's seen me try can attest.
Well, people, it's, listen, I don't know if you read the stuff that people are saying online, but people love Hal, and particularly they love uh Carrie's character and your character together. Like you've been
Mhm.
dubbed TV's favorite couple.
Mhm.
Um, I
That's
want
nice.
to, yeah, so I want to hear just how you two come together as actors.
We
How does,
just do. It's as simple
yeah.
as that. I mean, we didn't know each other at the time. I mean, I was knew her work and knew she was fab, and you know, and when I read the first script, I think it was the first two that I got, I was just immediately in love with the writing. But for me, it read as a comedy. And what I mean as a comedy is not something where people have gags, but something, you know, like certain types of 1970s films, and like, not to get too fancy, but like Chekhov and stuff, where if if it's true enough, it is naturally funny. So you're not going for the laugh, you're going for the what's true, and it's funny, you know, and that's a hard line to walk, because sometimes that can be faked in a way that I hate, where people are trying to be true, but they're secretly going for the laugh. And I can sniff that stuff out, and I hate it. It's like when people play chemistry, it just gets on my tits. You know,
Mhm.
there's certain things, people finish each other's sentences and all this stuff, which basically is what I call, it's safety wheels for producers, for executives. It's what they do to assure the executives that there is chemistry, and it's bullshit, right? Me and Kerry met in the makeup trailer just on the way somewhere. I popped my head in, she was there. I was like, oh, hi, hey. And we had a chat for about 30 seconds. I don't know, there are a couple of half-assed jokes that didn't need to be completed because, yeah, I get where you're going, etc., etc. And I stepped out, was handed my coffee, which was the reason I was there. And I thought, oh, that'll be fine. And that was it. Basically, that's the beginning and end of that story. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's a lot of that is just, it's extremely hard work if it's not there. There's a lot of acting that has to occur in order to, you know, but you don't get points for acting if it's there, because that's easy. It's taken care of itself, and it's literally just luck of the draw. And me and Kerry, firstly, I think what we see in the script and react to in the script is pretty much our own version of the same thing. And when we go out there to do it, we don't need to plan. I mean, we will work lines together, etc., etc. But it's fine, and it's not about cooperation. That is one of the mistakes that people make. Is like, you know, that's why sometimes watching couples together is not always fun. Because, well, I mean, you know, maybe if they're breaking up, it's great, or if they're just starting up. But you know, because cooperation is not the same thing. So it's like, I'm not trying to make it easy for her. She's not trying to make it easy. It's not so much. It's really they can take care of themselves. They're fine, and we enjoy it. We have fun. And
Well,
sometimes the fun is in just really getting at each other.
that's what I was gonna say. I have had the most fun talking to this cast this season.
Yeah.
You are all hilarious, and behind the
It's a
scenes,
genuinely lovely cast. It is.
yes, yeah, it really is. Um, I've been asking all of them, so I'm gonna ask you now. If you could award someone the title of class clown, who would it be?
That's a tough one, because we're all stupid in our own way. Definitely. I mean, Kerry's got her little dances and little. I can never walk away from the available joke. It doesn't get me into trouble so much, because it's like, I'm not a mean guy, you know, but I can't shut my fucking mouth. And and Atto's hilarious. I don't know. It's very difficult to say. It's very difficult to say. There's a lot of very funny people. We've all got, luckily, it's not competitive, because we've all got a slightly different vibe.
So it wouldn't surprise you to know you've been nominated by your co-stars a couple times.
Oh, really? A couple of times. I'm sure other people have as well. That's what I'm saying. Good. I'm glad that I got nominated a couple of times. Last idiot. Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, you know, in order to feel very relaxed and free doing it, my version of the method is to feel as open and free and safe and like the space belongs to us as I can. And silliness sometimes does that. It's not distraction. It's actually it's actually part of the process. And sometimes it can make you not look like a serious actor, unfortunately. But fuck them if they can't take a joke, I say.
Love that. That's gonna be my new motto. Uh, no, listen, I think it's fantastic because the show is a serious, you're dealing with serious topics, but like you said, there's a sense of levity to
Oh
it.
God, and have you ever hung out with comedians?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they are not funny. I mean, there are exceptions, but often they say, like it can be a lot more fun doing something serious in terms of the levity, sometimes necessary to stop it from being too, and vice versa. With comedy, it's not necessarily a funny process doing it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, you personally have such versatility as an actor. I'm curious to know what you love most about playing Hal.
Um, I love his speed of thought. I love the fact that he's a really, yes, there is narcissism. There is, but he's a really good guy. You know, he is, there's so much about him I love. I said, but as I was saying before, it's not just Hal, it's Hal and Kate.
Mm.
Somehow, Hal in a show without Kate, and you'd need, and Kate vice versa. I'm not so much. I'm sure she'd survive easily without me. But it's the combination that allows those traits to be shown. I mean, to a certain extent, you want for Kate to be seen in all her glory, to see her with him and with other, but it's those relationships that brings things out. And I just love how incredibly true it is. You don't need to, there's no bullshit to it. Every time it feels like it's slipping into it, there's a reality. You're always reminded in the writing, and it's with all the characters, but I really feel it with us. As soon as it starts to look like the thing you see on TV, and I don't mean shows, I mean politics, like when people have just been primped and everyone gets out the way, and that's what we see. It's the bit before, it's the bit afterwards. As Deborah Kahn, the showrunner, says, it's like, people walking up to a podium, and at that moment, you don't know that they're not thinking about their shoes, or someone might have just farted in the lift or whatever. It's like these things. That's why the sniffing of the armpits and the this and the that, it's what makes people recognize it as, oh, these are people with jobs. And it's an incredible way to look at, for me, what took the magic and the sting and everything away from reviews. It's just the realization it's just a person with a job trying to do this, and maybe they want to do something else, and now they did this, and this is what they do. And do you know what I mean? It's like that's behind the curtain. It's just people.
Yeah.
And what I love about the character and the characters and the writing is that.
Mm. Well, and I know for me, I'm so invested in Hal. I'm invested in the storyline. I'm invested in these characters. Um, how would you sum up his evolution in 2 seasons, and what excites you most about where he might go in the future?
Don't know if it's evolution or revelation. I mean, all of these things, it's about, because often the people that things will say to me about season 2 is they notice stuff that I thought I was doing in season 1. It's just about how you're watching, you know, that when people say, how has he changed? Like with the explosion, he's been through these things before, they have been through so many of these things before. But everything's different. I mean, it doesn't mean that he's a different person now, but their situation is different. So the explosion now is different because it's happened at a time when they're kind of potentially on the out. So it's had an effect that it's not had before. So that's a change. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, what's interesting, it's not so much just the change in him, but the change in her. That's what changes everything. It's about the energy between them which changes, and that has so many different potential iterations. Like the fact that she is now in a position to feel culpable for the kind of things that it used to be his job to be culpable for changes the dynamic and causes a lot of complications.
Yeah.
And, him trying to be good, that can go wrong for you. Like the realization that the thing that you complain about is actually part of what makes the attraction work. So I know that's not really an answer, but I'm a fan of not giving answers.
Well, it's good. No, you provoke thought. I mean, it
Mhm.
sent me on a whole other path. Um, so I guess lastly, to me, The Diplomat feels like a very different show. Like we've seen political dramas before, but The Diplomat has a very different feel to me. I'm curious, in your opinion, what you think makes the show stand out.
I don't know. I get kind of curmudgeonly when I hear certain snooty papers describing it one way or another. I just think, nah, I mean, I find it funny when people describe it as a drama. I mean, I know it is, but like, and I can't help but being judgy when people say, "Oh, it's not very funny." I think, no, I think you're just a bit dim, love. But I do like to be snotty, because I'm quite protective of the show. I'm quite protective of Hal, and a warning for people that judge Hal, I'm judging you back, because people are, guys sometimes believe me, through my career, I'm used to being ticked off on sidewalks. I mean, being in the holidays, done that for my Christmases forever. Now I get told off on street corners under Christmas trees, um, in a nice way. But, like when people describe it as like soapy in some, like, I just think, oh, fuck off. It's like, because it's not, I think the quality of the writing is really second to none. I think, but I do, yes, there are wild story swings, but there's that doesn't mean it goes into that territory that word connotes. I think there's something incredibly, I'm not sure. It reminds me of a lot of the things that Deb used to be involved with, or kind of rolled into one with a couple of other things. So there's a bit of the West Wing, maybe not without that kind of gleaming city on the hill idealism, which would be kind of impossible now. It's got a little bit of um, Homeland. It's got a little bit, but at the same time, it reminds me a little bit of Veep. It's got a little bit of, there's so many things, but I don't think there's anything out there like it.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that as the seasons unfurl, people get the whole idea of what the show is, because I think it's probably easier to judge season one, and then season two is like, oh, hold on, maybe it wasn't quite. And I think season three is going to be different still. More
I'm,
Alice and Janney, which is always a good thing.
mm, I am
That's
so
as much as
excited.
I can say.
I know you really can't let
Yeah.
on, but yeah, I'm very excited to see what happens next. It's this show does cliffhangers very well.
Yeah, I know. And I didn't really, when I responded to it, as actors like to say, it wasn't really the kind of story. I was like, yeah, story. I just love the characters. And then you realize with these cliffhangers, which I hadn't hoped for or wasn't expecting, it does give you interesting context for the relationship. So the more extreme the things are, the more pressure, the more, so it's all good by me. But yeah,
Very
these what's held on this time, cliffhangers, taking me by surprise too. I haven't read episode 8 of season 3 yet, so I don't know what's coming.
Oh, this is great. Rufus, thank you so much for taking the time today. It was such a pleasure getting to
So
spend this
lovely to
morning
talk to
with
you
you.
too. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Hope to talk to you next season. We'll do
Thanks.
this,
You
we'll
too.
do this
Bye.
again.
Bye bye.